Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
How's it going, gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scott McKay. I'm your host, as always, unless I'm co-hosting with my wife, of course, which is once every 10th show or thereabouts. If you want to check in and find out what's going on with Emily, you get to do that every once in a while. Also, that's posted to another whole podcast feed, which is actually the original podcast we started back in 2006. Started to seem like a long time ago. That's X and Y on the Fly. And if you've never listened to that show's format, there are some shows prior to when we started doing shows from this feed to that feed that are a lot of fun as well. So if you've never listened to X and Y on the Fly, be sure to do that. I don't mention that enough. If you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, we have some fresh stuff over there for you. And as always, I exhort each and every one of you gentlemen out there to join us on the Facebook group, which is the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. Returning today, once again, is one of you guys' favorite guests. She's always a lot of fun and sometimes controversial, and she may be that way today. The always effervescent Preity Uupala. How are you doing?
Aloha, namaste, g'day, howdy, my friend. How are you? And to your wonderful guests, Happy New Year.
Yeah, by the time they listen to this, it's not going to be anywhere near the new year again. But we definitely appreciate the sentiment, Miss Preity. Now, where are you today in the world?
Well, I just got back from Dubai. And before that, I was in Hawaii, which I absolutely love. But I'm back in Los Angeles. I'm back home, back in the daily grind, so to speak. This is going to be one hell of a year. Half the world goes to the polls. And I think by the end of this year, we will probably be thinking to ourselves, what the F just happened? I think it's a turning point year in the evolution of our planet.
Yeah, there are a lot of people saying that, and a lot of men saying that in terms of not only what's going on geopolitically, but in terms of their relationships with women. A lot is changing since we've all been at least apparently released from the throes of COVID lockdowns. People aren't exactly out there being social again, and a lot of guys are left wondering what to do, which brings us to our topic du jour, which is a great one that you thought of, which is the worst men's dating advice according to a woman. Now, I've got to tell you, Preity, I know you came up with a whole list of items you want to cover. But the first thing that I want to bring up is a lot of guys feel like they either need to do it a certain way, and if they don't do it that way, they got to do it a completely opposite way. And men just really don't think too much in terms of a gray area, do they?
No, they don't. It's fundamental.
Typically.
Yes, and fundamental difference between men and women is men, it is either black or white. And with women, it's actually all in the gray. So I think the challenge is we have to meet halfway somewhere, wherever that halfway point is. And I think both sexes, let's say, need to, they both have, there's an adjustment that needs to happen, I think, on both parts, because trust me, whatever problems you guys have at your end, women also have those problems and a whole lot more at their end. I actually think that men are having more conversations about their issues and trying to find solutions. With women, we don't even talk about these things because we just think we know it all, and we don't. And we constantly make the same mistakes. And we obviously don't like men lecturing us on how to, get around the issue, right? So it is such a sort of, it's a nuclear explosion waiting to happen. Volcanic, I would say. But I think it's high time that both sexes speak to each other and amongst themselves about the ground reality of the situation, because it's bad. If you look at statistics globally, it's the worst we've been, I think, in terms of communication, intimacy, happiness, joy, relationships, marriages, family, all of that, and we need to do something, or else it's not looking good.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you just said. As a matter of fact, anybody who's got their eyes open and the lights on pretty much sees that as obvious. Yet here we all are, Preity. We're still trying to, get together. Women still do love men and men still do love women. And, so far, I think we've already dispelled, or at least sown the seeds to dispel, at least 2 bits of bad dating advice men have. The first one being the one I just mentioned, of course. And the second one you mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, where you said that women are the ones who really aren't asking a whole lot of questions, thinking they had it all figured out. And meanwhile, men are being told exactly that. Which is women don't have any dating problems. They really do have it all figured out. And maybe women are really starting to believe that. But the truth of the matter is, as you stated, indeed, that women have a lot of the same dating and relationship issues that men do. And perhaps it's definitely erroneous and a total fallacy that men are being told, hey, it's always all your problem. Women are all super social. They inherently have this all down pat, and you're the one with the problem. Great place to start in this conversation, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I think women need to take a good look at themselves in the mirror and really be honest with themselves, because guess what? Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, we are the ones that have a biological clock against us. Men don't. They can be 80 and have a healthy child. Women can't. So, all these internal conflicts or these fights that we have with the other sex, or amongst ourselves, or even with ourselves. And, we can try to be right and, be assertive with our views in the modern world. But this clock is not going anywhere, and it's finite, and it is time is COVID, I think, was the best teacher of this. That time waits for no man or no woman. And while we're too busy trying to just, make ourselves be heard and be acknowledged that, our points are true and valid and all that good stuff, it's too late. I think by the time older women sometimes have actually a more sanguine view of life and love and relationships than very, very young girls who are still trying to find themselves. And unfortunately, if you're 50 and you kind of got it, it's too late for you on so many levels if you didn't already go through various sort of processes in your life, So I think for the rest of us who can still salvage the situation, which is, I think, honestly, it's majority of women out there, you have to be honest with yourself. But anyway, today's episode obviously is about the dudes. and it's great that I think that they're even having this conversation, and the fact that they're even willing to listen to a woman talk about, from their perspective, because they don't always get that. It's always from another guy's perspective. And, there's shades of accuracy and truth to that, but it's never all right or all wrong. It's always good to get a fresh perspective, especially from, I think, an outside in view, for sure.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it really is a shame that maturity and wisdom comes to us so relatively late in life, when we could have used it the most when we were a lot younger. So I don't think that's even gender specific. I think that's right on the nose. You did indeed come with a list of areas where you think men are getting bad dating advice. And the spin you're already putting on it is men don't listen to women. They don't get dating advice from women, nor should they, according to a lot of men, because, hey, women will just tell you to be yourself and you'll get all the girls. And most guys kind of grumble at that sort of throwaway sentiment that, hey, if I just showed up and was who I am, I'll do great, when really that's not working for me. Now, that said, you have, in spite of yourself, saying that, hey, it's great that men are willing to listen to a woman, admitted before we hit record on this particular episode that what you say is going to be kind of controversial, and you may ruffle some feathers out there. So talk more about that and give us any disclaimer or caveat we need to hear before we dive right in, Preity. Tell us about that.
Cool. Well, controversial, by the way, not just for obviously your podcast is for men, but I imagine there'd be a lot of women, people who follow me and actually just in the public domain out there, they tune into these conversations. I think a lot of women might disagree with me as well, from the perspective that I'm coming at. So it might be a little bit of both. Might give solace to some guys who have been thinking this way all along. But I want to start off by saying that both men and women are constantly being given bad advice these days.
For sure.
Because the dating sphere is so complex these days, and this bad advice actually has dire consequences, much worse than what it used to be in history. I think the problem is social media has given both men and women this false sense of inflated self-worth. Women think they're far more attractive and desirable and sexier than they actually are. And men think they're more masculine, stronger, powerful, cooler than they actually are as well. When in fact, I think most people are in the average to slightly average category. Obviously, no one wants to hear that. But, the minute you think you're up there and deserve the best of what the world has to offer when you're clearly not, you set yourself up for failure. Just a point, women do actually give very bad advice, not just to men, but to other women. And sometimes it's well-meaning. They want to help. Their heart is in the right place, but they're just, the perspective is wrong. And other times, I have to say this, I don't think they mean well. Sometimes it's consciously steering other women the wrong way, as well, whether it's just bad advice or they don't want to see. You see this a lot, you have a group of women, they all have marriages or relationships that are, whatever, they are what they are. You have that one single pretty friend who isn't, attached. They all give very bad advice. But subconsciously, they almost don't want to see this girl succeed because guess what? She's going to get that winner, and it's going to make their lives even more miserable. This is how we are. This is the biology, that whole herd mentality. It's there, whether you like it or not. It's part of our DNA. You have to obviously evolve and sort of grow past that. But, that is far and few of us actually get to that point of evolution, I would say.
Yeah, you're already bringing the trouble. Troublemakers such that you are, Preity Uupala. Interesting point you just made. It isn't necessarily that women give bad dating advice to men, but women sometimes purposefully give bad advice, generally speaking. And I'm hearing you say that's because they're pretty much catty with each other.
They can be. I'd say 50-50. I'd like to believe that most of them mean well, but it's either the advice isn't applicable to the other person, or it's genuinely. Yeah, I mean, this is subconscious. I would say,
and it's hard to sort it out, isn't it?
It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's the funny point is, and I think women need to maybe come to terms with this, but sometimes the best relationship on dating, marriage, love, sexuality for women might actually come from a male. And I know it's hard to take, but no one wants to be, what's the word? Is it
mansplained?
Mansplained, lectured by a dude, But honestly, sometimes because they're coming from a fresh perspective, and again, it's the outsider in. You don't want to listen to everything that some of these people have to say, but some of the advice, look, keep an open mind, I think, to both men and women. You never know where that good advice can come from.
Yeah, you usually catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, but if you start sweet talking everybody and sugarcoating things, you're not giving very good advice. But on the other hand, we do have a lot of people who are very negative, and they find their echo chamber of people who want to commiserate with them and throw a pity party. And that's how you get like angry feminists, and you get the men going their own way. And just like you said, there can be some truth to what is said in those environments, but it's not helping men and women have better relationships. It's simply helping reinforce this negativity and well, this sort of weird quest to be alone, even though we're still kind of obsessing about the other gender. The other thing you just said that I thought is worth underscoring is this idea that women are more likely to seek advice from a guy than a man is to seek from a woman. And, you know, most of the women who come to us would like to hear what I have to say and have me in on the coaching sessions with Emily, whereas most of the men who come to us really might see Emily as sort of a sounding board, a woman's advice being a corroboration of what he and I would be talking about on our regular coaching calls. So I really do think that's interesting. I think I can tie it all together by saying this. Whenever someone senses you're on their side, instead of against them, and that you're building an alliance with them and that you do mean well. And again, you know, I'm sure there are women out there who are the proverbial wolf in sheep's clothing, right? Trying to perpetrate like they're giving good advice when really they're just leading people astray. I know that probably happens in both men's and women's dating advice, but when people can read someone who would be a potential mentor or a potential source for advice in general, whatever you want to call them, as someone who's with them instead of against them, I think it can be very powerful if that person is of the gender they're trying to attract. But like you said, I think women are more drawn to that situation than maybe men are.
Yeah. And I think I can speak personally for me. Some of the best career, relationship, life path, purpose advice that I've received has actually come from men. And you are right. Women are at least more open-minded. And it's good for them. I think they should, we should all check our egos at the door. It's funny because I think when you are, on YouTube trying to look at these videos or you're trying to speak to an expert coach, you're there because something isn't working. If everything was perfect, honestly, you'd be living your best life and you wouldn't be spending all this time and energy. So you have to also be honest with yourself that it ain't working, or else you wouldn't even be seeking in the first place. So now that you're here seeking, well, at least be open and give the other person the courtesy, have the humility to understand that they may know something that you don't, and they may actually have the key to your problem, and perhaps their wisdom is going to unfree you, liberate you, and really sort you out, and it is a shame that I think most men prefer to get advice from other men. It's not always the case. I think it depends where the woman is coming from. And we're seeing more, I think, women really actually trying to speak on men's behalf and be a little compassionate to their needs and issues, which they do exist. It's just that they used to not talk about it so much. And now it's all come up to the surface, which is great. And, so I see a slight change in the manosphere, so to speak, or just public discourse. And that's always good, because we want to see a progress in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we haven't talked about yet here, which I think is kind of hiding in plain sight, is what about people who've actually been successful? Who's got the track record? I can't believe how many gurus out there, in business and indeed in dating, whatever it is, even health, can't point to a personal track record. I mean, when it comes to health and fitness, obviously you have to post your selfie and everybody says, all right, well, they're in pretty good shape. I'll listen to them. But it is so nebulous in the business world and especially in the dating advice world. I mean, the number of people I know giving dating advice out there whose own relationships are in shambles.
Yeah.
The men out there giving dating advice who men listen to and look up to, who never talk about any women in their life and how they've succeeded with them, astounds me. And nobody ever asks. And yet, like I said, something that hasn't been said yet is, what about getting relationship advice from a couple? I mean, obviously that's a biased opinion because Emily and I are together and we're both dating coaches together. But I mean, there's got to be something to be said for that. Obviously, these people have something, whether it's Emily and I or anybody else who has a track record, who's been there, who has the receipts, maybe they have something to offer. Now, the danger there, and this might go in the column of bad dating advice, is when any expert, self-proclaimed expert or expert with the receipts, like I just said, who can show the track record. The problem there is when any of those said experts start trying to clone themselves in the form of the people who come to him. Like, everybody should have a relationship like Emily and I have, or else you failed. You know, nothing else is success unless it looks like our brand of success. And, you know, that pattern of bad advice goes back to the pickup artist era, where everybody was trying to wear fuzzy hats and wear black fingernail polish and speak the same lines that work for someone else. What say you? I mean, I know we have to get to your list, but man, there's lots to talk about here. It's such a juicy topic to sink our teeth into. But yeah, this cloning of gurus is bad advice. It always is.
It's actually on my list. We'll get to it.
Okay.
But you're right. The amount of single, I don't want to be derogatory on your show, but single douchebags, trying to give advice to other guys on this is the way you get a chick or whatever. Seriously, and also single women giving advice to other women on the successful dating tips, marriage, love, sexuality. Oh my God, goes on and on. So you have to weed, filter through, go with your gut. The writing is always on the wall.
You know, interestingly enough, just this morning, I was talking with a friend of mine in this space about how some tactics and some dating strategies work for some guys and they don't for others. And as I thought about it, my retort to him was, I think the strategies and the tactics are what they are, but it depends on what the guy's goals are with women and who he is and what he's about and what he's trying to accomplish. That will decide whether these tactics, quote unquote, work for him or not. Do you know what I mean by that?
Absolutely. I think the key word there is tactic. It shouldn't be a tactic. This isn't, look, it is a game and it isn't a game. But life is a game, one could say. But, in the real sense of the word, this might, I don't know how people will take it, but the whole point of this isn't to try to sort of trick or con someone into liking you. That is not going to happen. And also, if you succeed in that, that's the wrong kind of person you want. They are really impressionable. They are not discerning. They're not wise. They're not mature about it. And if you can do it, trust me, someone who can do it even better than you, tomorrow they'll be able to do it.
Well, see, now, yes, that's exactly my point. If I want to trick women into bed, and I don't care if they're a woman of low character and I don't even need to see her for another day, then maybe sometimes this tactic will work, but that has to be my kind of shallow goal in order for me to like the results I see. If I'm trying to use those tactics to meet my one and only who I'm going to be married to for 50 years, then it's not going to work for me because I'm a different guy with different goals. That's what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And even it used to be about men helping men, and now we can see all these so-called, dating gurus. It's a money-making scam for them. It's a whole empire that they have running. And on some level, they actually need people not succeeding to keep signing up every month so that they have their financial goals can be met. It sadly turned into that. And you have to question some of the advice that you're getting.
Well, you also just described just about every dating app in the empire out there of dating apps.
Yes.
Yeah. They just want to keep you single and keep you paying monthly.
That's true. I think your soulmate, trust me, is not on Grindr or Tinder, I can assure you.
Well, for the guys listening to this show, they're definitely not on Grindr, I'll tell you that.
Actually, maybe someone on Grindr has a better shot because at least they're up. Remember, my hairdresser is on Grindr and he has a pretty good track record. He shares with me and I'm like, dude, you're scoring. And he's very clear about his intentions. He's very honest. I think both parties are clear. There's no one is sort of misunderstanding intentions. No one's getting hurt in the process, it seems, whether it's plentyoffish.com and soulmate.com or all of that stuff. It's a problem,
Yeah. Okay. So selfish intentions or the intent to clone us into a like-minded or similar lifestyle or similar persona to that person from which the advice is being taken, completely understood. What else is on your list?
Okay. So the first thing, I mean, this has to be, it's the quintessential thing, women only like bad boys.
Yeah, what does bad boy even mean, Preity?
Exactly. And I think someone could and should, I'm sure this is done, you could do a whole thesis on this. And I mean, plenty of books have been written on it too. From my perspective and my observation of traveling around the world and meeting all kinds of men and women from different cultures, we don't. We don't like a-holes. We don't like jerks. Now, the genuine confidence, we like to know that if push comes to shove, there is a situation, this guy is going to step in, take charge, and protect me and do what he needs to do. That's all we want assurance on.
We know how to be a little bit dangerous when necessary, but we're not like inherently dangerous to you.
Exactly. And taking charge is like not being, an a-hole to the whole world, but it's just like, do you have what it takes have you got the balls to, because you have to man up at some point. If somebody attacks me, I need you to step in, because there are plenty of men who are physically and emotionally not capable of doing that. And hey, I live in Los Angeles. You don't have to tell me what kind of problems we have to deal with here. We do like someone who's a little rough around the edges, but that comes when there is trust and respect, sure. And yeah, I mean, if you want to be more graphic, even in the bedroom.
Yes.
We like that too. Of course, that is the most sensual, sexual, arousing thing, I think, for a woman, is to really be taken, to really have this man completely overpower her, dominate her physically on every level. Men agree with it or not, that is the female psyche.
I'm a little turned on just listening to you talk about it.
But the caveat to that is the trust and respect.
Yeah.
In a marriage or a secure relationship, you have to let go. And I think when they are marital problems, or when they are problems, in the intimacy space, or the problem is that the trust isn't there, so you can't even go to the next level. And there's all kinds of things that come up in established relationship. But that's the most attractive, arousing thing. The caveat is the trust and respect. So don't be a douche and don't sort of jump in. We don't want that physical prowess without some level of respect. I mean,
well, women don't want to be abused. They don't want to be mistreated. They just want to know that this guy is capable of doing the things that aren't so pretty that have to be done sometimes. And that can feel a little dangerous and even dark sometimes. Just like how I talk about a guy's dark side isn't necessarily you being evil. It's just that which is unpleasant that you have to deal with. Again, this kind of comes back down to the gray area. Men think, all right, I'm too much of a Mr. Nice Guy, so I've suddenly have to become this jerk or this douchebag like you're talking about to make up for it. And that's just letting the pendulum swing all the way in the other direction, which is always going to be bad advice and certainly a bad course of action for any guy to think in extremes like that when it comes to this stuff. What's next on your list? Okay,
so the other one is, and I think this is becoming a problem in the manosphere, the whole you don't need a woman, stay single forever, don't get married, men going at it alone movement.
Well, the men going their own way. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is my soapbox right here. You nailed it. Why are the men going their own way still here, Preity? They're not supposed to be talking about women anymore. They're supposed to have gone. I mean, vamoose, scram. Quit talking about women. If you went your own way, then do it. And, when I say this to those guys, they start coming up with all these weird reasons why all my dating advice is wrong and why I'm not a real man and, checkmate. And I mean, checkmate, we're not even playing chess. I simply told you to leave because you said, your words, not mine. You're going your own way. Why are you here? It's like the end of Ferris Bueller. The movie's over. You're here? Go home. But they don't. And then they get mad when you remind them what their own movement is called. They'll even argue that it's a movement. It's not a movement. It's like, you guys are a bunch of children. That's why you have a hard time with women. They don't find you attractive and you're upset. You're angry. You're a little bitter. You wish it were different, but you're not going to do a damned thing to change it. You're just going to sit around and complain. Bad advice.
It's
bad advice.
It's funny, whether it's a podcast or a seminar, and it is this, hey, men going their own way thing. Everybody in the audience are people who, they actually want to be with someone.
They're miserable.
And they can't get it, but they're still here because they don't know what else to do. It's so counterproductive. And the men in this little movement need to look at themselves in the mirror because they're not being honest with themselves. They're actually quite miserable and hurt. We're not islands. We cannot survive alone without a human interaction, especially for men without the female interaction. And the sad thing is the statistics are dangerous today. The number of lonely, single, young men around the world is appalling. Did you know that 50% of young men in Japan have zero interest in intimacy? Some of them have never had an intimate interaction, and they don't even want one. And Japan is on the other side of the world, and they should be the last people on the planet to be having this problem, considering they have a demographic disaster waiting to happen with their own population and future of their own nation. But it's you see it here too. And never take advice, never take dating advice from a guy who is old and still single, not married, doesn't, well, maybe he's a baby daddy, but not happily married with children. Be very wary. He's not practicing what he preaches, so to speak. Look, unless you're a monk or a nun, you are meant to connect with others. And biologically, scientifically, we are meant to procreate. So, that is the worst advice. And there's a lot of that advice going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, men and women are designed quite literally to be in partnership. I mean, even sexually. It's just ludicrous for anybody to believe men and women are designed to be adversaries. And I agree with you 1,000%. Why are we taking advice from people who have no success, which we've already talked about? And moreover, why would we take advice from miserable people unless we're just crying in our beer together and we love misery, and misery, of course, loves company? I mean, but, when you get down to it, what we're talking about here is bad advice given to men who, for the intents and purposes of this show, want to get better with women. Why would they listen to a movement that calls themselves men going their own way when they're trying to get better with women? And I mean, it sounds laughable to say that out loud, but I get guys all the time who are married trying to make their marriages better, and they're listening to these guys trying to find an oasis of good advice somewhere in there, and it's just not going to happen. It's like, you know what it's like, Preity? It's like, I want to be rich, so I'm going to go listen to a group that goes, throw all your money away. That's the name of the group. Men throwing all their money away. Men going broke. Hey, can you guys teach me how to make a fortune? It's just the most ironic stupidity I've ever heard in my entire life, and I'm so glad you brought it up. And Preity, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to get emails from guys in this audience going, you completely misunderstood what we mean by men going their own way. That's not us at all. We're a whole bunch of different guys, and we believe a whole bunch of different things. Great. Then stop calling yourselves men going their own way and tell me who you really are for once, so I can communicate with you at your level for once. But it's a big lie, Preity. They're all lying to each other about how women are the enemy and men are better off without them, and yet they still keep talking about women. That's the thread that sews together every one of these groups of guys who are thinking this way. I love that you brought that up. What's the next one on your list?
Ooh, this is a good one. This is the word of the year.
Oh, the year's still young.
Let's say the decade is this one. Quote, high value man, unquote.
Well, I thought you were going to say resilience.
No, I think this high value man delusion, I'd like to say. It really is a syndrome. I should coin that, the high value man delusion. Because, look, there is such a thing as a high value man. It's just that when these men, these so-called gurus, talk about a high value man, I think what they're referring to and what actual high value men out there are two completely different things. And this is a tricky one, I think, because men genuinely want to believe in the concept of the high value man. They want to believe that anyone can get there, that they can get there. It's a lot more complicated than that. And I think what the gurus are teaching out there is leading a lot of good men down the rabbit hole. And it's all about semantics. It is how people understand these terms and concepts in their own mind.
Well, how are men being misled when they're told they should be a high value man and the definition that's applied to that? What's the bad definition?
So the bad definition is that word value. What do you mean you're highly valuable to society? What, you're some rich douchebag? You got a Bugatti? Does that make you a high value man? No, it's not just that you're 1% making $5 million. And I think the statistics, by the way, globally, again, the percentage of people who are making over a certain amount, and I think it differs a little bit, again, with race and culture, and some of them, it's You're like, is that it? Like, that's not even a lot of money. And you're telling me that only 5% of men from this group make over six figures, like, or $100,000, let's say. That's really not a lot of money, but it's such a tiny amount that make that much. It's not looking pretty. It's not looking very prosperous for your prospects, if you're a female and that's what you want.
All right. So what I hear you saying is a lot of people are basically applying superficial labels to the concept of high value.
Yes.
I would say it's about character. If you're a high value man, it starts with your foundation.
Yeah. And it can be, maybe you are the 1%, that's fine. But it's not about having a Bugatti and 10 chicks. That's not, you listen to some of the leading men in this sphere today in the world, and they keep going on about the high value man. And the guys who listen to them think, oh, all I have to do is somehow find a real estate MLM scheme or something, get a lot of money and get that fancy car.
And boom, I'm high value. I'm valuable.
Bang 5 chicks, 5 hoes or whatever, and suddenly I'm high value. That's not what value comes from.
Well, you know what, though? Net worth
is
synonymous with how much money you have in the bank in this culture when it comes to men. You mentioned a Bugatti. Yes. Ironically, the Bugatti Chiron Super Sport that prowls this neighborhood is actually owned by a woman.
Oh, okay.
And she's doing her darndest to be anonymous.
I've had the great privilege of knowing on a personal level actual billionaires. And when they invite you into their homes and their families, you realize they're very good people. They are family people. They have actually very strong values.
They can afford to.
They are married, normal women, good women with good values, extremely supportive women. That is key. I've seen in all of at least in my personal, let's say, network, these women are very supportive. They're very kind. They're very sweet. And these are good people with good values, and they're very generous. They have nothing to prove. They own everything. They have everything. And it's all, they're trying to make you feel very comfortable. But what we see in the media today, especially social media, is a caricature of extreme wealth. That's just some version of extreme wealth, which I think the majority of vastly wealthy men and women that's not how they live their life. In fact, they're much more humble and simple. They have been billionaires who have tried to live up to some image. At some point, they actually financially go bankrupt or they take a hit because now they're living up to an image versus actually living a genuine existence.
Well, I think you're onto something. If you look at the Forbes list of world billionaires, it's a few thousand guys. You've only really ever heard of about 20 or 30 of them.
Huh.
The rest of them are trying to keep it on the down low because, again, they have nothing to prove. And the last thing they want is everybody coming at them. Mm-hmm. And that's wisdom is what it is. But I love that you brought up this idea of high value man, again, being a term that's bandied about, but almost never defined effectively, or at least defined consistently. And I think that seems to be, a consistent thread throughout all this is men are being told to be a certain thing or a certain way, but no one really tells them what that means. And I mean, a lot of that may go ahead and distill down to the fact that masculinity itself is something we're told is nebulous and can be defined whichever way you want nowadays. And if you can define something any way you want, that term ceases to exist.
Yeah.
We did this with God, right? We've done this with masculinity. Now they're trying to do this with woman, right? And so it really is no secret that this is sort of a social agenda. And it is no wonder that people are confused by the terms that we use. And at the same time, ironically or not so much, they don't even bother to ask how that's defined. They just go and try to figure it out for themselves. So, I think that's really good. What else is on your list?
Okay, so I'm sure some of your audience may disagree with me on this.
We've already set that disclaimer. We're good. We're good.
Passport bros.
Passport bros. Well, this one might hit me where it hurts. Go ahead.
You've traveled a lot, so you can like myself. So, you can speak to this, I think. But this is a new interesting phenomena that's taken off recently where Western men, let's say American men, they have decided that they're not getting any love and respect from American women, so they're going to go to the other side of the world and find some chick that actually does give them the kind of respect and affection that they feel they deserve.
I saw that one coming as soon as you started on the actual topic that you were going to talk about. Who in their right mind, Preity, is going to go get a chick in the Ukraine right now?
Ukraine.
What are you thinking?
You'll be surprised. You will be surprised.
I'm not surprised. I'm just throwing it on the table as it needs to be said.
It is so, I don't even know where to go with this. And the fact that many men have signed up for this is actually very sad, tragic, dangerous, I think, for them and for women over here. Now, look, there are many layers to this topic. Firstly, look, I do agree that different people shine in different environments, based on how you appear, look, what you have to offer. You will be in demand. I can tell you, myself, going to 100 countries, I've seen how people interact with me in different places. Some places, people have, I go out every night, a fight breaks out, and other places, they're hitting on me, but they're no bar fights, so to speak. It's a different thing altogether. So I will give that to men and women. I think there are places where you shine. There are places where you don't. If you happen to live in a place where, look, there are options for you. But to think that the reason why you're not happily, attached to someone, or nobody's giving you, they're not looking twice in your direction, is because you're in the wrong place and you're going to, transport yourself somewhere else globally is just really, I think it's so bad.
If you can't find a woman who will be attracted to you, who you're attracted to in return in the entire United States of America or the entire UK, you don't need to go to the Philippines or Colombia or Ukraine. You need to go look in the mirror.
Absolutely. And the sad thing is, these men, this is also by the advice that's given to them. Think about passport bros, like, where do they go? They're not going to Sydney, Australia. They're not going to Stockholm, Sweden. They're
going somewhere where they don't speak English, so their social skills aren't called out.
Yeah. And they're going to Thailand. They're going to, and I really don't want to be derogatory here, but they're going to places where, I'm sorry, but it's the meal tickets situation is bad. And they will be very attractive to anyone there because those women can't wait to get the F out of there. And if you think that you're a hot number because you happen to go to these places and you got a lot of women around you, that doesn't mean that you're such an amazing guy with so much to offer. It just means that people in that place have certain needs and priorities, and you might solve their problems. So don't conflate sort of attention to actual love and affection.
The word conflate has gone out of style. I'm so glad you brought it up again.
The word conflation has become conflated.
Yes. It used to be kind of when woke was still a good thing to be. Yeah. People use the word conflate a lot for the unwoke. You were conflating something. Not to be overlooked here is the fixers in these countries know who they're dealing with. The people who show up trying to get a woman in Ukraine or in Philippines or wherever, they know they're being taken advantage of. And the fixers, as far as I've heard, prey on this false hope. Oh, you need to pay for a chaperone also, and then take us on a shopping date on the way to the airport and spend some extra money. And these guys are like, oh, okay. Why do I do that? Oh, because it's the custom here. Oh, well, I'm not going to Google that or anything. I'll just believe you because I'm desperate and I'm hoping to bring this wife of mine back to Canada or something. It's just a bad deal for everybody. Yeah. Except for the fixers, I guess.
I highly advise every man and woman that's listening to this, go watch 90 Day Fiancé, because obviously your soulmate can be at the other side of the world. And
could be.
I've traveled a lot. I've found wonderful people everywhere. I've, found a relationship who happen to live in another country, and whatever. It has its own challenges.
Yeah, I do know couples who are who were brought together
Yeah.
through similar circumstances as we're decrying here, and it worked out fine. But I think, for every one of those positive situations, there were a whole lot of bad situations that we've conveniently swept under the carpet, right?
Yeah. I have to say, life is not fair. It's different for different people. But whether it's real love, whether it leads to a happily ever after stories is completely different.
Well, it depends, I think, again, on whether the guy's looking for a transaction or looking for his one and only. I mean, he's going to be star-crossed if it's the former from the get-go. If it's the latter, I mean, he has a fighter's chance. But again, just like we talked about before, for a lot of guys, there's no gray area here. I'm going here for this purpose and that's it. And also, like we mentioned previously, what works for some guys might not work for other guys, depending on what their goals are, right? So by my calculation, you got one more on your list. What's that?
Yes, I do. And this is I think we've been speaking about this all podcast, I guess, but I succinctly will explain. It's the Hustler University.
Oh boy.
And that's just a term. I'm not referring to the actual Hustler University I'm talking about. It's the thought behind it. It's the idea. It's the concept, the perspective, the phenomena. It's just a term of reference that I'm using.
Oh, you mean Hustler University isn't a porn site with college chicks?
No, as in the Andrew Tate's, School of Hard Knocks kind of thing. So
Gotcha.
Thinking that you're suddenly going to become this stud because you signed up for this supposedly successful, I wouldn't even say dating coach, but the guy who's done very well, let's say with the ladies, signing up for the courses, thinking that you're going to become him and have, again, the success that he's had, that is monumentally delusional.
Looking for the easy button.
Well, guess what? You don't look like him. You're not him. You don't sound like him. He is him. But you're not him. You're trying to fake it till you make it. I think the biggest lie ever sold to men is that you can somehow con, trick, fool a woman into liking you. And the key words here are con, trick, fool. That's not how this works. I will say the big caveat here is I think a lot of young men and just men in general, they need help communicating. They have self-esteem issues. They want to be confident. They want to be able to learn how to go up to any woman, at least have a decent conversation. They need help with that. It's a very sincere seeking, I think. That's fine. You can go maybe learn to communicate a little better. But thinking that suddenly this is going to lead to love, intimacy, relationship, that it's not how it works. I think you can go to all the classes you want. The best you'll get is a few phone numbers and maybe a coffee date out of it. That is it. It doesn't go beyond that because women, we like what we like. Even if we can see the confidence in you, that doesn't mean that we're attracted to you. And I have on too many occasions seen guys who are trying so hard to be so badass. And they're not badass. They are the nerd who is trying to learn how to navigate. And it doesn't come out good. And in fact, they are nerds who are trying to be jerks. And they're actually not jerks, but they're trying to be one. And it actually comes out really, it's not good.
All right, well, hold on a second. In the interest of time, give me the 30-second, the elevator pitch rendition of why what you just said is different than just be yourself dating advice. If you're a nerd, just be a nerd?
No, you can be better. Be the best version of yourself, perhaps.
Okay.
Yes. And if you need, there's nothing wrong with trying to get to be more confident. But I think it's some of the lies that these gurus and the claims that they make that, hey, you too can be a rock star. Well, you can't.
Right. I think that kind of goes back to what we said earlier about gurus trying to clone themselves. That looks good on paper, but isn't going to work.
We do like someone who's very confident. It is very sexy. It is very attractive. But there's a way to do it genuinely. And I think thinking that being this badass jerk is going to make you look and appear more attractive, it's not. We actually see through you. These gurus also advise students to go for younger girls, very young women, because unfortunately, the older you are, you become more discerning. You're not impressionable. Of course, there's an attraction value to it too. I will say, of course, younger is more youthful, sexier for sure. Perhaps that's, I think, a side thing. The real reason why some of these men themselves prey on and advise other students to try to opt for the younger the better is because, young girls, they look at all of this very differently, and you can actually have more of an impression on them, and maybe their economic situation being that young is different to a 45-year-old CEO who she doesn't need you to take her on trips and, take her shopping and stuff. Whereas a 21-year-old college student will appreciate it more. So, I mean, there's all these different layers to it. But if you want the real thing, love, which is why we're all here, this is not the way to go about doing it. And it's very, very bad advice. I think it's the worst advice, because now you start seeing all these women in a different light. And that's not what they are. They're human beings, with a lot to offer. It's like if you're addicted to porn, you suddenly start seeing any girl as one of these women in the porn videos, and they're not that at all. So the whole game is wrecked. You've lost before you've begun. It will never end well.
Well, there you go. There's your mic drop. Boom. I'll tell you what, around here, the motto is deserve what you want. And that isn't accomplished with 3 simple words that make her spread her legs and do your bidding for you. So I think what you said is very true. I also want to underscore what you said about authenticity being integrally tied to confidence. If you're trying to be someone you're not, it's hard to be confident in who you are. Her name is Preity Uupala from the Preity-verse. She's a global strategist, advisor to governments and boards, director of the Omnia Institute, a public speaker, author, entrepreneur, world traveler, and erstwhile cricket commentator too, although she'll probably be returning to that once cricket season fires up again. You can find her YouTube channel, which has a whole lot of subscribers, by going to mountaintoppodcast.com/Preity, which is Preity. Pretty. So glad you came back. It's always good to chit chat with you. Man, time flew on this one. There was a lot to talk about, wasn't there?
There was. Thank you so much for having me on your wonderful platform. Loved connecting with your audience. I hope they reach out. Please do. Always nice to have those conversations with men and women alike on all of these issues. I look forward to connecting with each and one of you, and have a beautiful year, and stay cool.
Yeah, you too. Wherever you are, whether it's Hawaii or especially Dubai, it's hard to stay cool there. And it's always a pleasure to have you on. Guys, if you have not been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, go there, check out the master classes. There's one, like I said, at the end of every month, a brand new topic for you that covers in detail a particular aspect of getting better as a man and getting better with women. Those are there for you at mountaintoppodcast.com/masterclass, or simply by clicking the link from mountaintoppodcast.com. You can get show notes for just about every show we've ever done, see what our guests look like, download their sites, their YouTube channels, whatever it is they have for you, all from mountaintoppodcast.com. While you're there, please visit our sponsors, Origin in Maine, the Keyport, and also Hero Soap. And when you do, please use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 to get an additional 10% off from each of those. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.